are tuned to the human frequency on American Freedom Radio. This is your host, Sharon, broadcasting from the wild desert mountains north of Los Angeles, where our clouds have not been seeded. I'm here with my co-host, Gabriel.
Thanks, and I'm happy to be here. I was just thinking the other day that daylight savings time has got to be the stupidest thing in existence, but cloud seeding's our latest piece of disinfo floating around. It's a toss-up at this point. I'm hard-pressed to pick one.
Well, at least daylight savings time is not poisonous.
That's true. You got a point there.
I'm getting a lot of emails and concern from people in Los Angeles about the cloud seeding in LA County. Supposedly, the county is trying to capitalize on the incoming rains from the supposed El Nino. Well, obviously, they're not going to say that it started raining again because we've distributed thousands of orgone devices around the state. But that's what they're doing is they are spewing silver iodide out of these little metal tubes on the mountainside. And to me, it looks like that stuff's just falling right onto the ground.
That's exactly where it's going. And yes, they wouldn't dare mention orgonite.
And silver iodide, by the way, is not effective in inducing rainfall. It can increase the rainfall by 8 to 15% if conditions are right. So I'm a little confused why LA County would be cloud seeding now that we're getting so much rain anyway.
Desperation, just trying to explain it away any way they can other than what is actually going on.
Well, I have an article about this on my blog, thekembo.tumblr.com, and I make the connection between this cloud seeding charade and the orgone energy cover-up. This is not just a cover-up of chemtrails. There's a cover-up of orgone energy as well. And today, we are so excited because we have a special guest with us, Ken Rohla. Ken Rohla is an electrical engineer and an expert on scalar energy. He runs the website freshandalive.com, selling supplements, detox solutions, and healing energy devices. He's a huge influence on our work at the Kembo, and we've learned a lot from Ken about how to stop chemtrails and neutralize EMF. We're so excited to have Ken with us today. And Ken, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being with us.
Yes, welcome, Ken.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
We're just so happy to have you. We've spoken before on my other radio show, and you give so much amazing information because you have the solutions to problems that people think are unsolvable. And why don't you just give a little background into how you got started on your path?
Well, I was immersed in the medical system most of my life. My mother was a nurse for about 50 years. She was actually the nurse that delivered the first Salk polio vaccine. And I grew up around Duke University Medical Center, so I was immersed in the whole medical system and that environment. And so, so I had jobs in the medical system for, 23 years in various positions, everything from working in labs to administration and working with politicians and lobbyists and working in data centers with technology. And so that was pretty much all I knew about health. And so when I found my health lacking and I looked to that system for help, I didn't get any. And so I had to start looking around for other solutions and ultimately bumped into natural health and living foods and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, working with politicians, that must be a real fruitful endeavor.
It's like being on a television show from the standpoint that it's so unreal. Politicians, like their people would call me up in the position I was in at one point where we dealt with statistical analysis of hospital data, particularly the hospital treatments data. When you go into a hospital or any kind of healthcare system, all of the procedures have codes assigned to them, and that data is collected and follow up and all that is collected, and so you can track treatments and how well they work and that kind of stuff. And so politicians would call up wanting access to this data, which was highly illegal, and we tell them, it's like, well, sorry, we can't give that to you. And they go, okay, when can I get it? And reality didn't register with these people. So I can see why our system is so messed up, because we've got now the motivations for politicians to be in office are so different than they were many years ago. And
I'm reading a book from Wilhelm Reich that talks about this very problem even in the 1930s, where the politics is so completely out of touch with the people that during recruiting, a politician is trying to get the support of farmers. And he talks about all this economic theory, and then the farmer takes out some grain from his pocket and shows it to the politician, and the politician has no idea what it is. And so recruiting
Oh
for
yeah.
that day was over.
Yeah, and that's kind of the politics in the good old days. Now I mean, there's technological things involved that people wouldn't believe. I was told, for example, that high-level politicians are told that they're cloned, and that if they don't play ball, that their clone will take over. I mean,
I've heard
there are
about that.
things, yeah, and so I haven't seen verification of that, but I have seen some things. I've seen a lot of things that people wouldn't believe behind the scenes. And so there's this drama going on within politics, kind of like with everything on this planet, where there's the public persona and then there's the reality of what's going on. And the
You know, I
reality
want to
now is
get,
so
sorry.
distorted and so heinous that it's
Absolutely.
crazy. People wouldn't believe it.
I want to get into your knowledge of that as we get into the show a little further, because I know that you know about the reptilian influence on Earth and stuff that's just amazing information. I want to start with scalar energy. Now, Gabe and I were so hugely influenced by you. We've made thousands of orgone devices and distributed them all over California. And there's a science to orgone, very specific, and you call orgone energy scalar energy, and I know why you do. It's because the word orgone has been so corrupted by the mystical, fruity New Age movement.
We call them the fairy people.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before. I,
Yeah,
I'd love for
exactly.
you to please explain why you
Well,
use
yeah,
the term scalar.
Yeah, I'm sure you've run into this issue just like we have.
and I don't even really like the word scalar. It's just the word that some of the more mainstream physicists are using now for this type of energy. But yeah, Wilhelm Reich called it orgone because of his background as a psychiatrist and studying sexual aberration and sexual energy and things. So he didn't have a vocabulary, and he also didn't have a background in physics to describe this. So he gave it certain terminology, and then people have taken that and bastardized it and created all kinds of magical nonsense around it and made all kinds of claims that just aren't true. And so it's given it a bad reputation. And so I do
Yet,
tend to avoid that phrase. But people have been calling it different names for thousands of years. It's the same subtle energy of consciousness that's been around. It's been called chi and prana and tachyon energy and 0 point energy and these various names, but it's basically just this faster than light energy of consciousness that flows through the whole cosmos. And it is actually what matter and electromagnetic energy that we can see and measure is made of. This energy is passing through the subatomic particles or structures of matter, flowing through it at beyond speed of light rates. We've been told that the speed of light is fixed and it has a certain speed, and in fact, it's not fixed. It's been proven now that the speed of light is not fixed, and there are particles and waves that can go far beyond the speed of light. And so, Dr. Konstantin Meil from Germany and others have started calling it scalar waves and scalar energy. And so, I kind of latched onto that phrase. But whatever you want to call it, it's essentially it's this God consciousness that's flowing through everything, kind of like the Force in Star Wars. And because it creates matter and it creates the electromagnetic energy that we can see and measure, you can use it to um, modify matter and to alter and create matter. And organic living organisms use it all the time in their biology to do things like regenerate cells and heal and grow. And so it turns out we can capture this energy and do things with it. Ancient teachings, for thousands of years have shown how to do this with meditation and things like Kundalini yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, all these kinds of practices where you're using consciousness and physiology to capture this energy and manipulate it. Not a bunch of new age nonsense. The brain and your physiology, your nervous system, your brain, your cells, It is all a scalar wave transceiver. It picks up scalar energy coming from the center of the cosmos and it rebroadcasts it out into a field. And so you can take that energy and you can alter the matter within your own body and you can heal
That's right.
things or change things. But you can also, because this goes out into the quantum field, so to speak, or it you're radiating this energy outward. This is how you collectively with other people and all other living organisms create reality by taking this energy and slowing it down and coagulating it into this 3D reality. And so there's a lot of very interesting applications, including clearing chemtrails.
Well, that's a lot for most people to rack their brains around. So I guess that's why people just say it's sylphs. And if I hear that word one more time, I'm a nonviolent person, but I'm just gonna strangle someone. I'm sorry.
And we talked about this on
Yeah,
the last show. I can't stand it when somebody says, I put the orgonite out there and then the sylphs came and gobbled up the chemtrails. It makes me ill. I'd actually love it if you could explain the concept of the scalar wave vortex, which is something I talk a lot about on my blog. I don't talk at all about sylphs. And when people say that to me, I don't say anything back about it. I don't put them down for saying it. I just ignore it and
Yeah,
move
we just
on.
don't acknowledge it, and it infuriated Reich too in his time. That sort of mystical thinking.
But yeah, please explain how the scalar wave vortex is formed through orgonite and how it works, because there's nobody who explains it better than you can.
okay. Well, it turns out there are a lot of heavy duty scientists over the decades who have figured this stuff out and written about it and done experiments proving it. Dr. Konstantin Meil, most recently in Germany, has done a lot of work proving what's going on with this energy, doing experiments and experimental proofs and mathematical proofs, uh, showing practical applications and how all this stuff works. So essentially, we do have a pretty good idea what's going on. And you have to understand that we are disconnected, discrete beings as individuals. We are part of a galactic circuit. And so at a galaxy level, you've got this fast and light scalar energy zooming out of the centers of galaxies. And this is actually known in conventional physics now. If you read physics journals like phys.org, they've got multiple articles about scientists measuring this superluminal light coming out of the centers of galaxies, just blasting out at incredible superluminal speeds. And it comes out, and as it's coming out, it spirals and it vortexes as it comes out. And as it's vortexing, it's also branching and fractaling. And so it fractals and spirals throughout the entire galaxy. And so you've got this web of this energy that's flowing and branching as it goes. And then at the center of the galaxy, you've got this large singularity that people are calling black holes, white holes. It's like a black hole white hole combination, where energy is coming out one side of the galaxy and vortexing outward and spiraling throughout the galaxy, and then coming back into the center. So you've got this recycling going on, and this cycling of energy is what's responsible for polarities in the universe, for hot and cold, light and dark, male and female, all the different polarities that we see, plus and minus charge. This cycling and these polarities that we see throughout our reality come from this flow of this energy pulsing throughout the cosmos. And so it's relayed to us through suns and planets because, as Nassim Haramein and others have discovered, at the centers of suns and planets now, they've discovered that there are singularities at the centers of all the suns and the planets. And so these singularities or these black holes at the centers of these bodies, they act like a relay for this energy. And so as it's coming out of the center of the galaxy, it's relayed from the big suns at the center of the galaxy outward to the smaller suns. And so it comes to us, relayed from sun to sun to sun, and also to the planets. And when it comes to us, it's coming down to us from our sun and up from the center of the earth, because the center of the earth has a singularity in it. And so this whole universe is this web of black holes, and it doesn't end with our skin. The inside of our physiology is full of these black holes as well. What the Chinese call the acupuncture meridians, or in Ayurveda they call it the nadis. These are superconducting junctures of minerals deposited all along the nervous system and the brain neural pathways and in the DNA. And this superconductivity creates these black holes. So your whole body is a web of these black holes that are these interdimensional portals for this faster than light scalar energy that's flowing through the cosmos to come flowing into you. And that's why these practices talk about the flow and the blockage of chi flowing in and out of the body, because that's exactly what it's doing. It's coming to us and it's flowing in through these meridians and through the chakras, which are just large deposits of these superconducting minerals along the spine. So your brain is a transceiver. It picks up these scalar waves and rebroadcasts it out into this field. Your nervous system and DNA are the antenna for it to radiate outward and to flow back into our physical structure. And so these superconducting minerals within the body, they are interdimensional. They're multidimensional. Because they're superconductors, they have very weird properties. And part of these minerals are regular physical minerals that exist in our physical bodies, but the majority of that mineral is actually simultaneously existing in other dimensions of time and space. So you've got this flow of energy, this whole galactic circuit of God consciousness flowing through the cosmos, and it gets down to us and it's flowing through our bodies. And then we, with our consciousness and our physiology and our intent and focus, we radiate this outward, and through our intention, we use this energy to manipulate and alter the reality around us in a very physical way, in a very tangible way. So you can also build devices that will capture this energy and amplify it and alter its frequency and do things so that it can modify or even create matter and electromagnetic energy. And so with these orgonite type devices or any kind of a scalar energy device, pyramids, I make a circuit, I manufacture an electronic circuit that generates scalar waves. All these devices capture this energy that's flowing around us all the time and concentrate it into a localized field and or a localized vortex of scalar waves. And if you're doing this to, say, clear chemtrails, you can build little devices and stick them outdoors that will create a spiral of this energy that will go up into the atmosphere. And it's kind of like a little upside down tornado of energy where the focus of the tornado is out in space. If you build it properly, if you build it strong and build it properly, the focus is out in space and it will pull these particulates in the atmosphere that aren't supposed to be there because they're charged particles. And these scalar waves coming off of these orgonite devices or other devices like pyramids will ionize the atmosphere and pull out those charged particles and pull them out into space. And so, for example, Dr. Alexander Golod in Russia has a multi-million-dollar a year budget and heavy-duty credentials in physics and access to top secret technology where he can measure this stuff. He's shown that with pyramids alone, he's built pyramids, particularly one outside of Moscow that's 144 feet high. He's shown that these things have these big vortexes coming up off the tips, and they reach out into space, and they will clean a very large area, hundreds of miles around in the case of his pyramid. And also, because you clear the pollution out of the atmosphere, then you also balance the weather so that you don't get weather extremes like tornadoes or severe lightning or severe winds or hurricanes or tornadoes, those kinds of things. It balances the weather for what you're supposed to get. So you get proper rainfall, you get normal weather, you don't get any extremes. Extreme weather is the earth trying to clean itself. And that's what tornadoes and hurricanes do. They're big vortexes that go through and clean all that pollution that we create out. So if the pollution is already cleaned out, there's no need for it to happen. And so if a hurricane or tornado comes upon one of these areas that's been cleaned, it just falls apart because there's no energy there and no ionization to feed the storm.
So
And I've
Ken,
seen
when
this.
you're talking about pollution, we're talking about geoengineering toxins, right? The chemicals put into the atmosphere, the heavy
We're
metals
talking
used
about
for.
all pollution,
Okay, so
all of
we're
it, all
talking
of it,
about all kinds of pollution. Because
everything.
what
Yeah.
I've noticed, Gabe and I have been working with this orgonite for 2 years now. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the pictures on my blog. We have recorded time and time again in numerous locations where we've distributed, maybe 100 of these devices to all the cell towers and just around the area, the funnel-shaped clouds that you're talking about. And unbelievable clearings of geoengineering and pollution in general, like the smog lifts. And we've seen unbelievably deep blue skies and puffy clouds, just like in your video that you showed of where you live and how it's changed with the work you've done there. And we've done this all over California with consistent results. It really is amazing how well this stuff works.
Yeah, there's no way to really put into words just how amazing this life force energy is, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to to understand that everything that's put into our air and our water and our food, the weaponized food, the GMO food, and all of the other ways that we are we are poisoned literally, that is to slow down and obstruct this flow that you are referring to as much as possible.
Exactly. And these devices, all they are little antennas that are capturing this energy coming from the sun and from the earth. And so whether you're making pyramids or orgonite or whatever, that's all they're doing. So it can be explained in conventional physics terms. It's not, you don't have to describe it in magical terms, although it does a lot of amazing things, but it is, it's physics.
So, what you're talking about is this consciousness energy that pervades everything. And I've noticed that if I'm in a terrible mood, my organite doesn't work as well. And if I'm in a great mood, like Gabriel and I went out a couple weekends ago to gift about 100 organite tower busters between the mountains where we live and the ocean. And even before we started, just the sheer intention that we were going to do it, we saw all these transmutations in the sky, all the geoengineering just falling apart before our eyes. And as we went throughout the day, we recorded amazing pictures of how the sky transformed. So I would love it if you could explain more about the intention aspect, because I know people who work with orgonite that have a bad attitude and are in a bad mood about chemtrails and don't understand that this energy is actually the energy of love. It's God consciousness. So their organite doesn't work as well, even though it's constructed similarly to ours. So can you talk more about how what's in your own heart, your own intentions affect the functioning of the device?
Right. Well, for one thing, you have to qualify vibrationally for anything in this universe. The universe is never going to give you anything that you can't handle. And so if your thinking is limited, if your heart is closed, if you're in fear, because all this anger and stuff, it ultimately comes from fear. And when you do that from a physical standpoint, you are altering the frequency of your field for one thing, your own scalar field that you're putting out. And then you're also diminishing it. You can actually draw your field in or you can expand it. Because of the way I live and eat, for example, when I drive from my town to a neighboring town at nighttime, it's very common for me to turn off street lights as I drive by with my field because street
I
lights
wish I
have
could do
these.
that.
Well, everybody can, and some people do it more than others. It's like I've known other people that do this, but it's uncanny to the point where other people notice it about me,
We're not in
because
Los
usually when
Angeles anymore, dear. We don't have a light
I
pollution
Yeah,
problem
we had a
out.
light pollution problem there. I used to put all this energy into focusing on this one light, wishing I could put it out, but it never went out. Anyway, go on. I
well,
love that you could do that.
the thing to do is to meditate and expand your field, and the more you've cleaned out your body and increased the superconductivity in the body, the easier that is to do. I never set out to do this. It's just that I just like being healthy and happy. And so part and parcel of that is keeping my body cleaned out. And for example, just this weekend, I apparently breathed in, my wife and I both breathed in some kind of really nasty biowarfare bug that was airborne around here. And I'm not sure what it was from, but it was very virulent. And because of the things I do every day, it was gone in about 36 hours. But it was really severe at first.
Wow. So
And
what
so
did you
other
take for
people
it?
would be laid out. Well, I every day I take this cocktail of supplements and superfoods that build up my immune system, and but in particular to keep these bugs out because we're being sprayed, as you know, like roaches now, and with all kinds of stuff, with biowarfare agents, microbes, metals, nanotechnology. So
It's
every
not
day
just
I
chemtrails. It's
No, this
pesticides too. There's all kinds of chemicals out there.
yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. There are things used in agriculture like genetically modified microbes for agriculture. Um, and so every day I take a couple of nano zeolites, which are amazing because they're zeolites are a mineral that have a very strong negative charge, and they can latch onto positively charged particles in the body. And it just so happens that pathogens and toxins all have positive charges. So I take zeolites every day, and that has saved me 3 times now from radiation poisoning. 3 times I've ingested radioactive particles on my food and was saved by that. So zeolites were a big one, particularly these nano zeolites, because they can go anywhere that water can go in the body. They can go into the brain even and pull metals out. And they're having phenomenal results. This one company, Cosiva Advanced TRS, uh, and Clear TRS, their zeolites, they're having phenomenal success in healing autism just with these zeolites. I hear that they're actually spraying it in people's eyes, and it goes from their eyes straight into the brain and pulls these metals out. So zeolites are what I
Unbelievable.
take. Yeah, it's amazing. So I take those every day. I take big doses of vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and enzymes in food format for the most part. I also take this product called Rad Neutral, which we're getting to relaunch next week as Rad Detox, but it's a really, really weird, what I call a Ormus homeopathic. It's water with these superconducting monoatomic minerals in it, and then the minerals have been programmed with scalar frequencies, the anti-frequencies of all known radioactive elements. And so when you ingest this stuff, it goes into the body and it radiates these scalar waves throughout the body, which then neutralize the radioactivity in the body.
That's
And it works
amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
Can
So
you do me a
this is,
favor and dispel the zeolite disinformation we've been receiving lately? Because I have had great
oh yeah,
results with
yeah.
zeolites, and
Yeah, I was just about to say, imagine how healthy you'd be if you took Mike Adams' brand of zeolite. You'd be
no,
on top of the
he
world.
said not to take zeolite, and I keep getting, I'm a proponent of it, and people keep saying, well, you should look at this article. Like, I saw the article, but it's not true.
Yeah,
Can you
and
explain?
I love Mike. He's a really really good guy, and his heart is in the right place. And most of the time, he does really wonderful things for humanity. But in this case, he's just wrong because he doesn't have a background in science, and his analysis is flawed. Basically, what he did was he took some micronized zeolite. He took powdered zeolites, and he dissolved them in strong acid. I believe it was sulfuric acid, and then he analyzed it chemically to see what elements were in it. Well, zeolites are first, and he found, by the way, aluminum and several other heavy metals, and he said, oh, on lead and various things, and he said, so therefore zeolites are toxic and you should not be taking them. Now, the interesting thing is, he still sells zeolites on his website. And this is, to me, kind of a little bit of the hypocrisy. He says, if you look at the way he phrases things, he says you shouldn't take zeolites on a daily basis. But he doesn't say you should never take zeolites. And it's because
Mhm.
he sells a zeolite product for removing cesium from the body. And so anyway, but the crux of it is his analysis is flawed. There's an overwhelming body of evidence that zeolites heal stuff in the body as well as detoxify it. Not all zeolites are the same. There are cheap zeolites that you can get on places like eBay that do have toxins in them. The reputable companies all clean the zeolite cages. These zeolites are created when lava hits ocean water, or they can be created in similar ways to that. But they get these little structures in their molecular form that are like little buckyballs or little geodesic domes, and inside those domes they have very, very strong negative charge, and that's what latches onto the toxins and pulls them out of the body. Well, when they're in the ground in these deposits, these ancient seabeds, they will pick up toxins and minerals sometimes and heavy metals uh, in the soil. But when they pick them up, they don't release them in the body. And this is a very, very important point. I've been taking zeolites for probably 15, 20 years now, and I test everything I do. And I always test supplements for at least 6 months before I ever release them and recommend them. So I know for a fact what's going on with
So you're
whatever
not
I'm
like the
using.
FDA then.
No. And the thing of it is, the only thing that matters is what goes on in the body in vivo, not what happens in a test tube, not what happens when you dissolve these things. Mike made the mistake that conventional agriculture makes when they analyze the needs for soil. Conventional agriculture will take a strong acid like hydrochloric acid, and they'll take your soil sample and dissolve it in this strong acid, and then see what elements are in your soil. And then whatever's lacking, they'll say, okay, this is lacking, so therefore you need to supplement with this for your soil. Well, the problem with that is that plants don't emit hydrochloric acid and strong acids to dissolve the minerals in soil. They emit weak acids. So there's a company called National Ag Labs that understands this, and they will do soil analysis by putting the soil in very weak acids, the same acids that plants and fungus secrete. And so you get a very accurate measurement of what is bioavailable with the minerals. So it's the same thing with these zeolites. If you go and dissolve them in strong acid, yeah, you're going to see everything that's in there, including the aluminum the zeolites are made of, because zeolites are aluminosilicates. So they're made of aluminum. And that doesn't mean they're toxic because they don't break down in the weak acids in the body. And even
Okay.
when they grab onto heavy metals in the soil, they don't release them in the body. They just pass on through the body. However, the zeolites that I sell, they don't have any of those issues because the companies that make them, Cosiva, and now we're getting ready to come out with another one from Results RNA, and there are several others like Wayora and several others. They clean the cages of the zeolites. So they use, in the case of Cosiva, they use vitamin C to clean out the cages. The zeolite breaks the cages apart into very small angstrom-sized particles. So those particles can go anywhere in the body that water can go. So you don't have that concern at all because there are no heavy metals in those zeolites, and the particles are so small they can pull things out. But whatever zeolite you're taking, it's very easy to test and see. All you have to do is do a hair analysis or a fecal analysis and get a heavy metal measurement of your body, and then start taking these supplements, and then get testing again in about 6 weeks to 8 weeks, and you will see whether your levels go up or down. And I've
Well, I
done
can
this
just
with,
tell you how I felt so much better after I started detoxing
yeah,
zeolite. It was an amazing difference. But the first week, I actually felt not so good as all that stuff was being removed. And then after a week, I felt better than I ever felt.
And we didn't even have to take a
exactly.
fecal
Yeah.
analysis or
Well,
anything.
I was just doing
Yeah,
it because of the chemtrailing. I wanted to get those heavy metals out of my body.
yeah,
Ken, I just wanted to back up a little because I had one more orgone related question before we move on to more of
okay.
these detoxing topics because I want to know a lot more about the GMO reversal and all of that. But I just have one more question I hope you can answer. I have an orgone device that I make that I learned from this guy in Switzerland. His name is Aya. He's got videos on YouTube, and he made a device called the Obelix. And also, Orgonite Austin, his real name is Dwayne Gardner. He made them as well, and we found amazing sky cleaning results with this device. But it's made differently. It uses the same materials as Orgonite, but no resin. It's actually a quartz crystal wrapped in gold leaf, then silver wire, copper wire, and you can also add aluminum and iron wire. So in those orders, gold, silver, copper, aluminum, iron, and you
Just like wrapped around the
wrapped around it,
base.
and you place it in the sun, and it's solar activated. So I was wondering if you could give some insight because this one I can't figure out how it works. I just know it works. I've seen it just blast the chemtrails out of the sky. How would that actually function?
Okay, I probably should explain a few physics principles so you'll understand this. First of all, what all these devices are doing is they are, like I said, acting like an antenna and capturing these scalar waves from the Earth and the Sun and then repropagating them. So if you want to generate scalar waves, one way you can do it is through something called the Casimir effect, which is simply when you put two plates of metal very close together, about a 16th of an inch apart from each other. It's been found in conventional physics that it will create electric charge, but it will also create scalar waves. And so the Casimir effect is one way you can create scalar waves. And that is why when people make orgonite devices with metal shavings or metals, you get scalar waves because of the Casimir effect. Now, those particles being close together, when you've got big shavings, you're going to have much less of the Casimir effect going on than if you have, say, powdered metals.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's kind of like when you put marbles in a jar. If you put big marbles in a jar, you're going to get a certain number of marbles in that jar, and there's going to be a certain amount of surface area on those marbles. And you put smaller marbles in there or little peas, you're going to get exponentially more surface area and a lot more peas or little marbles in a jar.
So the
So
finer the metals are, the better off it is.
Oh, we
precisely,
prefer
the more,
brass shavings from the locksmith because some of them are almost a powder.
Yep.
yeah. And you can buy metal powders. And that's what I recommend people to do to get electrolytic powders because they're the absolutely finest. Then you get an exponential increase in scalar waves just from that. So that's one way that these devices make these scalar waves. Now, the other way is by using these minerals, whether they are in macro form like crystals or powders themselves. Um, Crystals, all crystalline minerals have these superconducting monoatomic elements in them. Some have more than others. Volcanic minerals have high amounts of these superconducting minerals. And so they're in a form that is not obviously superconducting normally, but they are responsible in crystals for the piezoelectric effect. Now, the piezoelectric effect is simply when you strike a crystal like a quartz crystal strongly, it can shoot out electricity. That's the principle behind the igniter in a gas grill. When you push that little red button on a gas grill and it pops and it ignites a spark that starts the grill up, it's actually popping a little, it's smacking a little piece of quartz that's connected to two wires. So shocking a crystal will create the piezoelectric effect and create electricity. But if instead of hitting it and striking it, if you just squeeze generating electricity, it will generate scalar waves. So in the case of orgonite, when you take minerals and crystals and these metal shavings or particles and you put them in some non-conducting resin, and that resin suspends these particles and elements in a mixture, and then that resin, if you're using something like fiberglass, it will actually shrink up around all those particles. And so you'll get the Casimir effect from the metals, and you will get the scalar waves coming off of the minerals that are under compression. And that's how this stuff works. Now
So
you
with
can
the
also,
obelix, in the case of the obelix, since there is no resin on that particular device, I was curious. It works great. I've noticed the
I'm getting to
effect
that.
is. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm coming to. So that's one way of, and that's how orgonite works, and that's one way of making these scalar waves. And the other way is simply creating an antenna to capture the energy coming from the earth and the sun. And that, for example, pyramids will do that. And you don't have to build a big, gigantic pyramid either. You can make a little 6-inch tall pyramid out of orgonite or other things, any kind of non-conductor, any kind of electrical non-conductor will capture these scalar waves. You can capture these scalar waves with metals. So, for example, you can make a pyramid out of metal, but metals are waveguides for scalar waves, and they can even block scalar waves, particularly aluminum. Aluminum blocks scalar. Nikolai Kozyrev proved this in his experiments with scalar energy. And so, if you understand the physics of what's going on, if you understand that this energy is flowing from the center of the earth and coming down from the sun, and you use these metals properly, you can create antennas and waveguides that will capture this energy and guide it and create these spiral vortexes. So in the case of these devices like you're talking about, you've got this large macro crystal, and a crystal in and of itself is a scalar wave antenna. It's full of these monoatomic superconducting minerals embedded within it, this interdimensional matter embedded within it that acts as a conduit for the energy coming from the earth and from the sun. Then it sends it out through the tip of that crystal, through its crystalline lattice structure. It concentrates it through the tip and creates a scalar wave vortex. That's why human beings very often doing energy work like Reiki or other kinds of energy healing they'll use crystals and put them in their hands to modulate the frequencies of their own energy for healing purposes. So when you're talking about clearing chemtrails, you can take these crystals and create these metallic forms around them that act as waveguides or concentrators, and then you'll get the effects that you're seeing clearing the chemtrails. It'll send a vortex up into the atmosphere, which changes the ionization of the atmosphere as well, and you get the and other benefits too.
So it's a negatively ionizing technology. So you're taking out the positive ions, which are the polluting metals and particles, and you're putting negatively ionized, you're negatively charging the atmosphere. Is that correct?
For the most part, it can be adaptive. From my experience, the ionization can be positive or negative depending on what's needed.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because we noticed that these devices balance energy. So you're going to get
Exactly.
the weather you're supposed to have. So here in
Exactly.
California, yeah, they engineered a drought, and so this brings rain. And I've looked at videos of some people that have too much rain that they say it's not normal, and then they use this and it clears the sky, and then they have sunny weather.
Yeah. Dr. Tom Bearden in one of his Energy in the Vacuum DVDs, he talks about this Casimir effect and how this scalar energy kind of bubbles into our 3D reality. And what he says is um, that you get this, normally you get this, our 3D reality is being created continuously by this interdimensional scalar energy bubbling into 3D and creating charge and creating matter. And when you have empty space, it's got an equal amount of positive and negative charge. But that charge can be thrown off, and you can get interesting effects by doing things like creating the Casimir effect. And so it's really quite complex. It's interdimensional. It's not simple electromagnetics and conventional physics. And it's very much interdimensional physics and very much scalar physics.
I think sometimes this stuff takes a little bit of faith from people too, because a lot of people aren't ready for it, even with a scientific explanation. This is the best explanation I've heard for how the Obelix works. Even the maker of the device doesn't really know how it works, except that he finds that it needs to be in the sun, and that you benefit the most from putting the largest face of the crystal directly towards the sun. So it's great to know how this works because I've been using them and I can explain the orgonite, but I couldn't explain this. So thanks for that explanation. Um,
Yeah, it makes absolute sense too when you think about it because it's capturing the scalar waves coming from the sun and then acting as an antenna and rebroadcasting it. And so it makes sense that it would need to be out in the sun.
Well, just change gears real quick. I am very, very interested in your work with GMO reversal and undoing something that a lot of people just feel that things like corn and cotton and soy and sugar beets are all irretrievably lost at this point. But I I'm very fascinated with this because you're showing that that's simply not the case, that these things can be brought back to life.
Oh, absolutely. And a little known secret that Monsanto doesn't want people to know is that these GMO crops will revert themselves over several generations if they're left alone. And the reason is because the genetic pattern for all living organisms is not in the DNA. It's in the consciousness of the organism, whether it's a plant or a microbe or a human being or a dog or a cat. The consciousness of the organism contains the genetic pattern and it cannot be altered. The DNA can be mutated and damaged and warped so that it doesn't pick up the pattern as well, or it changes the expression of the pattern. But the DNA can be healed and reverted back, and it can be strengthened so the superconductivity is raised in it. The DNA is simply a superconducting antenna that picks up the scalar waves of consciousness from the organism and brings it, it's the interface between the physical organism and its consciousness. And so the DNA is the carrier of the genetic blueprint. It is not the source of the genetic blueprint. So when you understand that, you can feed the plant or animal or microbe superconducting ormus elements, which in a common platform, that means volcanic rock powders or the platinum group metals and they will revert and unwind the DNA. And I've seen this happen with several different experiments where GMO plants totally alter their form and their look within that plant, not in several generations, but in that single plant within a few weeks, just by being fed these enormous elements. So practically speaking, you can take rock powders like azomite and rhyolite, which is Jersey green sand, Redmond minerals. There's a book called The Enlivened Rock Powders by Harvey Lisle, Lisle, and that book is a really good primer on rock powders. But you take these volcanic rock powders, all volcanic minerals are going to be high in these superconducting elements. You feed it to plants or animals in bioavailable forms, and they will heal the DNA and revert the GMO manipulation.
Wow, that is amazing. So the any virtually any insidious augmentation that's done will just revert back just because it's unnatural, and
Yes.
that's where our mouths or our
Yeah.
jaws are dropping to the floor.
I'm in amazement because, I was already living a life of awe and amazement for the past 2 years, ever since Gabe and I started making Orgonite. It's literally changed our lives. It's not just about cleaning the atmosphere. It's a consciousness expanding activity.
Yeah, I always tell people it's one of those things where I feel at any point in my life I can look back at my timeline and say, there's the dividing line. There's before I found out about orgone energy and afterwards.
But
It's one of those huge things.
what you're saying, Ken, is that everything is energy, and that there really is nothing that the parasites that think they rule this earth, and that there's nothing they can do to permanently destroy it. And I think that this is great for alleviating some of the fear. I've already knew not to be afraid of them, but many people I know, no matter how many times I show them what we're doing with Orgonite, they still call me or email me saying, oh, they're spraying us with chemtrails. It's a war zone out there. And I just say, this can all be fixed. We're working on it.
We are not the complaints department. we we made this known on our first two episodes. The complaints department is closed for
But
business.
what you're saying, Ken, is that there doesn't even need to be a complaints department at all, because everything is energy and everything can be cured and solved with what we have.
Absolutely. Well, when you understand this stuff at a deep level, when you understand that consciousness truly creates reality, and that's not just some metaphysical or metaphorical conceit, we are truly the hands of God. We are part of this galactic interdimensional circuit of energy and consciousness. And when we clean our minds out and let go of the fear and clean the physical toxins out of our body, you strengthen that superconductivity. You strengthen your connection to God. And when you're playing with these devices, you're surrounded by it. You're strengthening this connection to the Creator. And so things become easier, things flow, and also these beings that are doing these heinous things on the planet. It's all a game of consciousness. It's really just us having something to do, because if everything was perfect, it would get pretty boring. So we're playing in this drama here, and no one can be harmed or destroyed without their permission. So if you give your permission by acquiescing, you give your permission by playing the victim and going, oh gosh, gee, there's nothing we can do, and believing the BS that you're being fed, instead of snapping out of the reality that's being manufactured for you, stepping out of that and seeking answers. The answers, all you've got to do is go to the great oracles, Google and YouTube, and you can find answers for everything. There are brilliant, brilliant people who have solutions for all of this stuff. And the reason being is because the polarities of this consciousness energy that create the problems have opposite polarities that always simultaneously create the solutions.
Well,
So when you get
you'll
that,
be tracked in the process, but you can go to those oracles.
Well, that's okay.
yeah, exactly.
I
Well, it doesn't
personally
matter.
can't post anything on YouTube. I got censored the second video I put up, which was an activist talking about GMOs and Hawaiian sovereignty. So, what do you know? Some people can't
There are
post on
ways of
YouTube.
there are ways of
I
doing
put it
it.
on Vimeo.
Yeah, we use Vimeo. It's much less known than YouTube is, but it works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There are always ways of doing it. You just have to be clever and not, but when you step out of victimhood and you realize whenever you encounter a problem, there's already a solution out there for it, and you just start seeking it, you will find it. And the powers that
That's
be,
true.
they can't harm you without your permission. You allow it by acquiescing. I don't acquiesce. Years ago, I learned, probably 25, 30 years ago, I learned about trauma-based mind control, and that set me on the path of breaking free of the reality being manufactured for me and creating my own reality consciously. 98% of the people on this planet are creating by default. They're letting others create their reality for them.
Absolutely, that's so true. And yeah, MK Ultra would be another 2-hour episode minimum. We still would only scratch the surface. Anyway, we're coming towards the end of hour one here. I'd like to give you a couple minutes to plug your website and tell us about any current projects you're working on, what's new with you, things of that sort.
Well, my website is freshandalive.com, and that's mainly where my products and information about them resides. I do have a resources page there with a lot of interesting information. I've got interviews and things there, but I have a radiation links page there that people might be interested in because I have tons and tons of solutions to these problems all around the world. For example, there are 61 patents. Actually, there are more than that now, but I've got listed on my website 61 patents for methods for neutralizing radioactivity on my website, 8 of them in Japan. So if you guys want to take a look at that, that is Radiation Links with an S, radiationlinks.freshandalive.com, or you can just go to the resources page there. My blog, which also has lots of videos and articles and things, I'm working on an article right now on the zeolites with just overwhelming mountains of evidence to the contrary of what Mike Adams is saying about zeolites. So that'll be out soon. But my blog is freshandaliveblog.com. And I'm also on Facebook, although my personal page is filled up now, but my professional page, you can still follow me there. And I'm on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. But if you go to freshandalive.com, it's got links to all that stuff. I have a YouTube channel as well.
Oh, and Ken, we're doing an event together in April. You're going to be
That's
at the
right.
5D event, April 7th through 10th at LAX Holiday Inn,
Um,
and so are we.
yeah, I've got a bunch of events. As a matter of fact, last year I had a really, really tough year with travel last year. It was just really exhausting. And so I vowed I wasn't going to travel much anymore, and I haven't been. But I do, for people who want to see me live and converse with me and pick my brain, I'm going to be in
Like
LA.
us.
Yeah, I'll be in Los Angeles at the 5D event. Their website is 5D Events. Actually, you can go to all this stuff on the Fresh and Live events page, but April 7th through 10th, I'll be in LA. And then April 15th through 17th, I'm in Philadelphia at the Free Your Mind conference, which will be a really cool one too, because they got some really interesting people that are going to be speaking there. And one of my favorites, which is purely nostalgic, Mary Sean Young, who played one of the lead characters in the movie Blade Runner, is going to be there speaking. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm also going to be in New Jersey, right outside of New York City, at the end of April. And I just confirmed today that I'm going to be in Austin, Texas, in late May, and I'm going to be in San Diego. Oh, no, not San Diego. But anyway, just go to the events page on my website. People can see where I'm going to be. We'll get all the latest stuff posted
Well,
soon.
that's awesome. We're excited about the 5D event and listening to your workshops. And I'm going to be doing a talk there too on a related topic, but I'm going to manage to do it so that it lends something extra in addition to all the great stuff you're already talking about. Anyway, go check
Yeah, we
out
should compare notes.
thekembo.com. I will. I will definitely be taking tons of notes at your lectures. And also check out thekembo.com. I also have a link to the 5D event there.
We will be back with Ken in hour two. And please check out his website, check out our website, support our work, and we will see you in a moment.
We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Welcome back to the Human Frequency on American Freedom Radio. We are joined with our guest, Ken Rohla. And Ken, I'd like to continue our talk on the many interesting things we're talking about today, but I'd like to specifically shift now to negative entities, specifically parasites. I think they go by many names, many idiomatic expressions, if you will, but I'd like to talk a little bit about those entities that are out there, and both earthbound and extraterrestrial, and again, just like you do, keep it solution oriented and solution based.
Okay, so we're talking about non-physical entities as opposed to physical parasites. Is
Well,
that what
all
you're
of them
asking?
actually. I find that the physical parasites, like the things in your intestine and in your body, they seem related to the entities out there that are manipulating our
Yes,
minds.
it seems
I've had a
that
direct
one's on
connection.
the inside working with the ones on the outside, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've had to remove both from my life.
Yeah, well, it's definitely all interrelated because when your body is toxic and acidic, then you create an environment for the physical pathogens to be in there. And it's been shown now, scientists have actually discovered that these microbes and these pathogens in the body, that they have a collective consciousness and they will screw with your mind to get you to feed them and foster their growth. And they call it quorum sensing for those folks that want to study the scientific part of this. It's not, again, it's not some new age nonsense. There are heavy duty scientists studying how these microbes, these pathogens will, they go and grow within the body but not attack until the time is right. And they have an intelligence behind that. And then they will also, their consciousness, their scalar wave field will interact with yours and get you to crave foods that will feed them, typically sugars and starches and those kinds of things. So you've got that going on. That environment, when your body is clogged up and acidic, full of toxins, it shuts down the superconductivity in the DNA and in the meridians and in the chakras and the brain neural pathways. And so it suppresses your consciousness and makes it easier for these lower vibrational types of consciousness to mess with you. It's like the more God consciousness that you have flowing through you, the stronger you are physically, but also the stronger you are emotionally and mentally. And
That
so
makes
that's
total
why all great
sense.
teachers, yeah, and that's why all great teachers have always said, to purify the mind and body and to go within and get your answers from within. Because if you clean out the physical body and you clean out the emotional body and the energetic body, then that God consciousness will flow through you better. And you're stronger, you're more beautiful, you're more intelligent, you're more empathic, you're more connected to yourself and to other people, you're more psychic, all of that.
So, did you have your own journey of cleansing parasites from your body as you were getting healthier?
Oh God, yeah. Back in the
Yeah.
day when I first learned about this stuff, I was very gung ho. So I would do cleanses, like I'd do an herbal cleanse where they would have, say, to do like 3 or 4 different types of herbal extracts. I would do 8 or 12 at a time, and be having such strong cleanse reactions that I could just barely stay awake enough to ingest them. It was like I would just have major cleanse reactions and be just wiped out and exhausted and just drooling on myself. But I spent years doing a lot of really deep and intense cleansing, and you can tell when you really get deep in the body with cleansing because you'll start smelling and tasting things 15, 20 years. And so there was a period of my life where I was doing that kind of stuff and going through those kinds of things. And in the last years, after the Fukushima disaster occurred, I spent a year and a half developing a device to clear the fallout out of the sky and also the chemtrails. And it was absolutely exhausting. I barely ate and slept for a year and a half. I mean, I just worked way, way too much and way too hard and didn't take care of myself and kind of ran myself into the ground. And so it's only been the last couple of years that I've really been taking care of myself again and kind of building up my strength and my health and everything. And so yeah, absolutely. I've had a lot of journeys with detoxing and healing. I've had to heal my own DNA and heal myself of major health issues.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. We went through similar things when we started taking supplements, and specifically zeolite. We felt like we cleared a lot of nasty stuff out of us, and we cut out a lot of the GMO stuff from our diets, and our stomachs kind of declined in size. We started getting noticeably more fit and things like that. We went through the same type of process.
Yeah, well, we use zappers too. Do you know about the? I'm sure you know about the zappers. It's an invention by
Oh
Hulda
yeah.
Clark, and we'll sleep with the
Oh yeah.
zapper for weeks on end. And man, that thing does something.
Oh
I
yeah.
had
Oh
okay,
yeah.
kind of gross. I hope this isn't too gross, but I had a colonic while using the zapper, and I had been doing a series of colonics, and when I used the zapper, I couldn't believe how much more I eliminated.
Hmm.
So I don't mean to be
Yeah,
gross, but
I
the zapper
recommend
takes
those
care of a lot.
zappers. Yeah, they're very good. They create a square wave signal that it creates a current over the surface of the body that actually creates scalar waves within the body, and then the square wave signal itself. A square wave signal is simply an electrical signal that shuts on and off very at abrupt cutting on and off. The pathogens in the body can't handle it. They can't take it, and so it kills them off. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the zapper. I use herbal extracts. I use zeolites. I use my silver bullet that I carry this first aid kit of stuff with me when I travel, especially, but I always have it at home too for things for killing off these pathogens and also for removing toxins of various kinds. But the silver bullet for these pathogens, including GMO pathogens, is chlorine dioxide, known as MMS or CDS, and the stuff is ridiculously cheap. It's basically swimming pool bleach. When I was first told about it, it really is. I
That's so
was.
funny.
Sorry. We're just again, our jaws are like dangling near to the floor because we actually have just been in touch with a friend of ours who is getting some of that very thing MMS for us when we go into Los Angeles, and it's
Well, I'll
just
tell you,
it's
it's
one of those
magic.
harmonic convergences. We're getting it, and then you talk about it. It's like that
Yeah.
happens so often.
Well, it took me a couple of years to be a convert or a convert because I had a friend who was actually a couple of friends who were fellow Hippocrates Health Institute graduates, and they kept telling me, "Oh, you got to check this stuff out." And I was like, "There's no way in hell I'm putting bleach in my or recommending it to anybody."
It's
And
so
he kept working
funny.
on me for a couple of years. Yeah,
You know,
and then I got Lyme disease. So I thought, well, okay, let me try this stuff out and see how it works on Lyme disease. And in 3 weeks, I just kind of farted around with it. I didn't really even take it as directed. And in 3 weeks, the Lyme was gone.
is
And
Lyme
so that
disease
opened
also
my eyes.
a biowarfare agent?
Well, it's definitely been weaponized, and then also like the Japanese weaponized it in World War II, but also there are a lot of GMO biowarfare microbes that are being misdiagnosed as Lyme disease. That's something I've been seeing. There are
Ah.
quantum biofeedback devices like the QXCI Skio or the Indigo that can detect these biowarfare agents in the body. And that's how you can discern whether it's something like that or if it actually is Lyme disease. Lyme disease is created by a spirochete, and you can detect it and measure it and see it in the body if you do the right tests. But a lot of times, in my experience, medical doctors will just look at your symptoms and go, "Oh, you got Lyme," so when actually you've got some GMO biowarfare bug in you.
Well, that covers the parasites on the inside. What about the parasites on the outside?
Well,
Yeah,
parasitic
because
entities, in my experience, non-physical beings are really no different than physical beings and physical humans. You've got all kinds, you've got a huge array of humans on this planet, some angelic and some evil and everything in between. And it's the same thing with these non-physicals. In my experience, non-physical entities are just different types of beings. They can be human or otherwise that exist outside of the vibrational frequency range of three-dimensional reality. And so from our viewpoint, they appear to be non-physical, but they can have effects in our physical reality. And just like you can have parasitic human beings who will suck off the life of other people and be parasitic to other people, you'll have these entities that'll do the same thing, and a lot of them feed off of the scalar energy that you're putting out, and a lot of them like the fear frequency, and
Yeah,
so they'll
they'll induce you to put out the vibration that suits them rather than the one that suits
exactly
you.
exactly
Can people
so
be
just
infected? Like, can a person be infected by a parasitic entity and then lash out at other people
oh yeah, well
on
that's
behalf
what
of them?
possession yeah, that's what possession is. Possession is when you've got these big entities that jerk you around and put thoughts in your head, and you don't know. If you're not sophisticated enough to understand what's going on, you just think it's you, and you think those thoughts are yours. And they can also sometimes create physical pain and things within the body. But in general, it keeps you in a mindset where you're fearful and angry and those kinds of things, and then you lash out and you feed those entities by keeping that frequency.
I find that I've seen a lot of people in my life, particularly people that had some kind of power over me in the 3D world, like a boss or a landlord. I've seen them become very hostile in strange ways towards me. Like I had a boss that was very nice and then turned extremely abusive. And then when I decided to quit the job, even before I notified her that I was quitting, she became nice again. So I was thinking, this is very odd. I'm wondering if she's in control of these thoughts or if something's influencing her because I didn't tell her I was
It's just
quitting.
it's part of I think it's part of manipulating that quantum field
Yeah.
as you say.
Yeah. And I also feel
Also
like
part of being a sociopath.
oh yeah, she was definitely a psychopath. That's for
I mean,
sure.
that's
But
that's classic sociopathic behavior is to manipulate people and things in a way that the person gets what they want. So they'll be nice when they have to be, or they can be cruel and manipulate things if they want to be.
the other thing is, I have personal experience with wireless frequencies, the Wi Fi in particular, affecting my field in a way that it was almost mind controlling me or reducing my capabilities. Like living without wireless internet, I found my capabilities with my mind increased and my work with orgone energy increased. Yeah,
Significantly
like
at
we had
that.
better results. And then when I turned the Wi Fi on, stupidly, I turned on the Wi Fi for a guest for one night. Not only could I not sleep all night, but when I woke up in the morning, 1 month of work where we had completely cleared the sky for a month was done, and the sky was plastered with chemtrails. So I felt that this field of the wireless frequency was directly impacting the scalar field from my body and from our devices.
Mm.
I feel like that might be part of the whole mind control and parasitic
Oh,
agenda.
definitely.
Yeah, and it's not so much conspiratorial as it is vibrational. You know, it's like when you hold a certain vibration, you're naturally attracted to certain things, and you like doing certain things and having certain things, eating certain things, or whatever. And that's kind of how the whole universe operates. It's the details are complex, but the concepts are fundamentally simple. And so, because a lot of people think that there's all of these conspiracies, and there are lots and lots. I mean, I've encountered a lot of them, a lot of things going on behind the scenes that people wouldn't believe. So there certainly are lots of conspiracies, but I've met a lot of people who believe that they were targeted individuals and things like that when it was simply because of the fear that they were living in, they were creating it for themselves. And I've certainly done that for myself as well. And I've had, talking about entities, I've had many experiences with entities, how to never worry about them, how to never have them influence you. And that took a lot of lessons, a lot of difficult lessons, some of them terrifying. And so I've just learned now it's not even a part of my reality, entities attacking me and things. Matter of fact, just this past weekend when my wife and I had this bacterial attack, And I got a SCIO scan. The SCIO was showing that there was some kind of psychic attack going on as well. And I thought, well, that's interesting because aside from feeling physically bad, I didn't feel emotionally or mentally bad, um, because I don't know, I just don't let that into my reality. And so, you through healing, the way that you strengthen yourself physically and emotionally and mentally is through healing of all kinds. Physically healing the body, physically detoxing the body, physically fortifying the body with nutrients, and then clearing the mind and the emotions, doing emotional healing techniques. One of my favorites is Vipassana meditation, which is not easy. You go and take 10 days and you sit 12 hours a day and meditate for anywhere from 1 to 4 hours at a time for a total of 12 hours a day for 10 days straight. You take a vow of silence. You can't talk to anybody. It's not easy to do. But when you do things like that, it's extremely powerful at clearing these emotional uh, issues and programming and blocks within the mind and in the cells. This stuff gets stored chemically in the cells too. So the more that you purify the mind and the body, as all great teachers have taught, the less these negative things affect you. It's like you can be in a shitstorm and it won't land on you because of the vibration that you hold.
Well, I can just speak for myself that I gave up pork on my 30th birthday, and I don't even crave it anymore. So I guess
Exactly.
that's an extreme example, and of course I'm a lot healthier than I make it out to be. But I it is true that those cravings just completely go away once you've been without them for a long time. But anyhow, I'd like to talk about now the reptilian influence on Earth, and this is something that Sharon and I have experienced very much since we started gifting orgonite and working with orgone energy and orgone energy devices. Can you give us your take on that?
Well, my experience has been, throughout my life, even as a child, I had a lot of very weird experiences, paranormal experiences, and being young and being surrounded by the people in the environment I was, I didn't know what to think of it, and I just explained it away as other things. But throughout my childhood and my youth, I'd have, for example, very vivid, colorful dreams on sometimes, not always, but sometimes, where I would get downloads of information and all kinds of information. Sometimes I wasn't consciously aware of what the information was. Sometimes I was. And I just thought that everybody had that. I thought everybody had these vivid dreams. And on occasion, I'd have weird things happen, like I'd wake up in the backyard in the grass after having one of these vivid experiences. Or I would have this very vivid, colorful dream where there were humanoid beings standing in my bedroom with a bright light shining in through the window and those kinds of things. And the interesting thing is, often this was going on while my brother shared the bedroom with me, and he was on a bunk bed on the bottom bunk. These things would be going on, and he wouldn't even know it. So, so I had this long history of having these kinds of experiences that it gave me a different viewpoint of the world, and I guess I had less attachment to the physical world. And in my 20s, I got exposed to the Seth books, these channel books, and it was, for me, it was like being hit by a lightning bolt. There was all this information in these books that I had always believed, but I had never heard anyone outside of myself state those ideas. And so it was like this huge revelation. I got, wow, if this entity is channeling through this woman, Jane Roberts, I wonder if some of this information that I'm getting is coming from somewhere else other than me. And so I started talking to these voices sometimes that would give me this information and say, who are you? Where are you from? And so over time, I was told that I was interacting with extraterrestrials, and which, I've obviously, being an engineer geek type, even then, I had a really hard time believing that. And so I wanted empirical evidence of it. And so the one thing I couldn't deny was that the information that I was being given was totally out of left field. It was stuff that it wasn't a part of my reality, but it was very, very useful, and it was very helpful, and it had practical applications very often. So ultimately, these voices that were talking to me, I kept saying, well, look, if this isn't just me all talking to myself in my head or I'm being crazy, then I've got to meet you physically because, I need that validation. And they kept saying, well, we can't do that. We can't do that because it would traumatize you too severely. Your DNA has been programmed to fear our form. And yeah, I didn't really know what that meant, but I just kept pressing and I kept pressing. And so finally, I did encounter these three reptilian extraterrestrials, and I had a witness with me at the time. Um, and I was in some woods at a very special vortex, actually. It was a vortex that some people had made, and they didn't even really know what they were doing. But they made this giant scalar vortex, and I was sitting in this spring with my feet dangling down in this spring water, which is high in ormus, which raises the superconductivity in the body. And I'm meditating with this friend of mine, and we start getting this telepathic communication simultaneously. And we didn't know that the other person was getting this communication, but by this time, these voices would always come in and say, "We are here," when they announce themselves. So they said, "We are here," and I said, "Okay, what do you want?" And they said, "We're here because you requested us to be here." And I said, "Okay, what do you want?" And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, this is too crazy. So I said to the guy with me, I said, "You're not gonna believe this, but I got reptilian ETs talking to him in my head." And he said, "Yeah, they're talking to me too." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I just kept meditating, and they start talking to me, and I said, "Well, what do you want?" They said, "We are here because you requested us." And I said, "Okay, fine, but what do you want?" They said, "No, we're here physically. Open your eyes." And so we both simultaneously opened our eyes, and about 50 yards woods. This was kind of in a valley, and it was in the evening, and it was backlit. There was these three very large reptilian beings. They were humanoid. They had two arms and two legs. The small one was about 12 feet high. The large one was probably 18 feet high. I mean, they were like the size of a two-story house. And they were very muscular. They had scales all over, but they were kind of slender. They weren't wearing any kind of clothes. They didn't have any genitals. And I'm trying to grok this because I'm thinking somebody's got to be pulling my leg because it looked so stereotypical, like Star Trek. It looked kind of like a cross between this reptilian ET and one of the original Star Treks called the Gorn and Mr. Worf. Reptiles had
Wow.
these three ridges coming down their head. They had one coming down the middle that came down to their nose, and then they had two coming down the sides, one down each side, very much like Mr. Worf in Star Trek Next Generation. And I'm looking at this going, this is so stereotypical. Somebody's messing with me. And I'm saying to the guy next to me, is like, "Are you seeing this?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm
That's amazing.
smacking myself in the face, trying to, make it go away and trying to grok it. And then finally, after about a minute or two, I realized like this is real, and they're communicating with us telepathically simultaneously. And when I realized it was real, I just instantly got terrified. And I said to the guy with me, I said, "Let's get the hell out of here." And we ran back to the house on this property. It was a very large acreage. And and then, we were freaked out. I was totally freaked out. I didn't want to talk about it back then because I cared much more back then about what people think than I do now. And I didn't want anybody thinking I was crazy. So I wasn't, and there was a party going on. So I didn't want to come into the party and tell my friends, "Hey, I just saw a bunch of reptiles," and neither did the other guy.
Yeah, that's
And
kind of a
so
buzzkill.
it really is. I mean, because really, imagine you're at a party and some guy comes up to you and goes, "Oh my God, I just saw three reptilian ETs out in the parking lot." You're gonna
Maybe
go, "Yeah."
nowadays that would go over better. But when was this, Ken?
It was about
They just say,
25 years
"Here,
ago.
smoke some of this."
But when did this
Yeah,
happen?
nobody. When did it happen?
Yeah.
It was about 25 years ago. It was in the
Oh,
summertime in North Carolina, in an undisclosed
1991,
location.
the year punk
Hmm.
broke.
Yeah,
Sonic Youth,
yeah,
Nirvana, good
yeah.
times.
And so,
I was 6.
wow. Well, I was having misadventures then, and then that night when I lay down to sleep, and as I was going to sleep, they came in, not physically, but they came in and started talking in my head and said, "We told you your DNA was programmed to fear us." And I said, "You're absolutely right. I don't ever want to see you again." And for a couple of years after that, I was terrified that I was abducted. And I was a runner, and I would go out running at night sometimes, and I was afraid all the time that something was going to jump out and beat me up or take me away. And so ultimately, I had to get over all that, process through it all, and realized over time that they were benevolent. They weren't going to hurt me, and they were giving me a lot of information on the stuff that I'm teaching now about monoatomics, about scalar energy, about the nature of things, and this reptilian influence, which we haven't gotten to really yet. Um, and
Well, that
so
must
at
have
the
been
time,
very taxing for you to get over that an experience like that traumatic.
it was stressful. It stressed my wife a little bit because she thought I was freaking out. One time I was laying in bed at night and I saw this giant crystalline spider-like thing hanging up over my bed, and it dropped down on the bed, and as soon as it did, I jumped up screaming and flipped the light on. And of course my wife is thinking I'm totally bonkers. And I was having a lot of experiences, a lot of strange experiences that could very easily be classified as a psychosis or something. And so you can't go around talking about this stuff or people will think you're crazy. So I just kept a lot of it to myself. And on
Yeah,
occasion, I would, and
they don't have a handle. If it hasn't happened to them, then it must
exactly,
not exist.
yeah,
That
there's
sort
no
of
frame of reference.
narrow-minded.
On once in a
Yeah.
while, I would bump into somebody on occasion who had encounters with these reptilians, and they were in the same boat. They were like, oh my God, somebody else who's had this experience. And so over time, I came to realize that it was real, and I always question the nature of it. Even to this day, I question the nature of it. But the information that I was given was so very useful and practical, and it's really helped me to maintain a happy and healthy life. So from that standpoint, I don't think there's anything negative or evil. But these were a very different group of reptilians, and they said so. They said that they were a group of rebels that had broken off from their society, so to speak, because they had had experiences that um, elevated their consciousness, and they were working with some other extraterrestrials that were different. But they showed me that the majority of their culture, they are birthed just like reptiles here on Earth. They're birthed in these communal nurseries, and the babies never meet their parents. When parents conceive and they have an egg or eggs, they're taken to these communal nurseries, and the eggs are hatched and raised just until the babies can survive, and then they're left to themselves to defend for themselves. And so they have a very huge death rate or at a very young age. And then it's very, very dog eat dog, psychopathic,
Hmm.
um, and that they're raised in. And so they value strength. And this is why these reptilians do this, because they're raised in this culture this way, where there's no connection or nurturing to the parents and family, and they're very much autonomous, and they have to fight to survive. So they grow up into these very warlike, sociopathic creatures that don't have empathy and don't have emotions like we have. And so they've been interacting on this planet for thousands of years. And I was told that it was reptilian master geneticists that actually came to Earth and took proto-humans on the planet and modified them genetically to create what are now modern humans. And so, but they showed me a lot of things in pictures and visions and also in words about their culture and how their culture has been interacting with our society. Back in the early days, they were seeking to harvest gold on this planet for various purposes because they said that gold is one of the very few elements that exists the same throughout different dimensions of time and space. And so they use it for dimension travel and time travel in their craft, or in their case, they don't even use craft. They can do it. They
Do
can
you
travel physiology.
do you think there's a connection then between the Federal Reserve taking gold out of circulation and replacing it with paper money to take the gold out of our hands? We talk a lot about sound money and real money, which is gold and silver. I think there's more to it than just a way to hoard wealth and to make us poor. I think They're
Oh, sure.
literally
There's
taking
lots of
away
things
a
we can do
natural
to.
connection we have, a connection to a mineral that is the fabric of our world and our universe, part of the, you know, universal fabric.
Well, the reason that I've seen that we've had this historical value placed on gold in particular is because these reptilians that originally came here, these reptilian ETs, it was a small group. Um, they needed to mine large amounts of this gold to make monoatomic gold to repair the damage on their planet from nuclear and other types of war that had destroyed their atmosphere and their planet. And they were rebuilding it, and they needed this large quantities of monoatomic gold. And they couldn't harvest it fast enough, and so they wound up genetically engineering these proto-humans so that they could be smart enough to mine this gold. And in the process of doing that, and modifying and reconnecting their DNA, these humans started becoming too smart. And we have the ability to create our reality just with consciousness. So they had to unplug some of our DNA to keep us controlled. And that unplugged DNA is what modern scientists now call junk DNA. They can't figure out what it's for. Well, it's unplugged DNA. And these
Just
reptilians,
plug it back in, man.
You got to take
yeah,
out the
well, you
chemicals,
can
though. You
do
got to
that.
take out the toxins and the
Yeah.
Exactly.
frequencies.
You plug it back in by detoxifying the body and nutrifying the body and getting these superconducting ormus minerals into the body, and that's how you replug it. So anyway, the reason we have this connection to gold and this value placed in gold is simply because these reptilians set up this planet, and they eventually these humans that they engineered multiplied to the point where there are hundreds of thousands of them, and they had to have some of the humans manage the other humans. So they gave secret knowledge and information to a select group of these humans to manage the other ones that were harvesting the gold. And in exchange, they had a much higher, more comfortable living, and they maintained power and control. And that has continued on to this day. That's why the powers that be to this day continue to harvest and mine and collect that gold, because they're still interacting with these extraterrestrials, which have evolved now to where they don't normally show up physically here on the planet. They show up more interdimensionally, and they interact with these physical humans that are what I call world management. And so, of course, these humans in charge, so to speak, have fractioned off into varying clans that are fighting with each other over power and control, and secret knowledge and all that kind of thing that's being given. So that's the dynamic that's created this value, this false value on gold. Gold is actually not rare. It's been on Earth. It's not that rare. It's just that it's locked up in the Earth's crust. It's also not that rare out in space, apparently.
Well, what you're saying brings to light another issue, which is the state trying to control the family and not, allowing the parents to have the say in their children's health. So we have this vaccine law in California. If the reptilians
Exactly.
don't raise their children, they don't understand the human need to raise our children.
Exactly, and that's also why you see this sociopathic society that we have, and throughout our government, throughout these control systems, and the people that are the controllers, because they have these reptilian values. These values have been passed on to them. This concept of conquer and strength and submission over others, that is a very, very reptilian trait. And see, having been around these reptilians and seen how they act and how they think and feel, even though these ones I've encountered benevolent, they still have these reptilian tendencies. It's very, very clear to me. I see the reptilian influence throughout our society, in the media, in movies, in attitudes, in government, in the way that things are run, and the way that things are what's promoted, the ethics and values that are being promoted publicly. And it's become more and more blatant because these ETs and others are losing control of this planet, and so they're having to tighten their grip. And so this sociopathy is becoming more overt, and that's why you see what you like, the lack of freedoms in the United States. It's the darkness before the dawn. It's their last grab efforts at maintaining power and control, and they're
And they
losing it.
know, and they know that they're losing it, and then that it doesn't matter what they do, it's not going to work.
I don't really
Exactly.
watch television. I don't watch television, but I see the ads. And Gabe and I lived in Los Angeles most of our lives, and we actually just left a month and a half ago. We still live very near LA, but there's a lot of billboards there. And I just wanted to share one with you. I don't know if you've seen this, Ken. It said it was a show called Humans, and the saying on it was, "Made in our image, out of our control," which I thought was kind of a message, like a direct message from the
Well,
alien
exactly.
masters.
And we could give you a
Exactly.
hundred other examples of the same type of thing.
Exactly.
But
This
yeah.
stuff is it's interspersed throughout our culture. It's interspersed throughout religion. It's interspersed throughout television and movies, and it's more blatant than ever in the media. It's like I don't watch television either, but I see clips sometimes on YouTube, and I see people post things on Facebook, and it's blatantly obvious to me how, for example, every show where it's about extraterrestrials coming to Earth, the interactions are always fearful and negative. There's always this spin, even things like Superman. There's all this mind control programming going on, for example, like in the Superman movies or Batman or whatever. Now it's all dark and fearful and negative. I mean, Superman was all the American way and liberty and freedom and all that stuff. And now he's like this character who's this dark, skulking guy who goes around, in all these fights and beating people up and stuff and very negative. But it's
Great
all when you
example for
study,
kids.
yeah, when you study trauma-based mind control, which I highly recommend because this to me is the biggest issue on this planet is mind control.
Yeah.
98% of people on this planet are having their reality created for them, and they don't even know it, and they usually won't even admit it. And when you consider the possibility, you don't even have to agree with what I'm saying, but just consider the possibility that other people are creating your reality, then start seeking ways to of that, and you'll find them. It's always
I,
going within. It's always shutting off these external influences and going within and healing and dealing. And when you do that, you will wake up and see. It's like when you buy a certain car and all of a sudden you see that model of car out on the highways. It's the same thing when you step out of the mind control by turning off your television and unplugging from all this crap,
Hmm.
social media, from because the herd programs themselves. I see it on Facebook all the time. I see all these people mirroring all this crap that they're watching on television or YouTube or wherever, and it's all fearful for the most part.
Yeah.
And it's it's
Absolutely.
it's like they've become little news reporters reporting the negative news all over again.
Yeah, here at Team Kembo, we have taken an ardent anti-Facebook stance, and I don't think that's I don't think that's going to be ending anytime soon. But you mentioned Star Trek: The Next Generation, and in the penultimate episode of the first season, there is an encounter with the parasitic entities, and specifically an actual physical parasite that is like crawling around and like infecting
the
people.
one that
And
kills Yar.
yes,
Yes.
oh
Oh
no,
yeah.
No?
no, that's the
Oh,
one before
sorry.
Oh
him.
That's
no,
the one
there's
before
there's
that.
It's
there
a
have
little
been several
crawly guy.
Oh,
parasitic
the crawling guy.
entities.
Yeah, the crawling guy. That go right, right.
Oh yeah, yeah,
There,
yeah.
right. I know what you're saying. There's
So that this just is yet another example, and this was 1987 or 88 or something like that. But these signals of just these little hints about what's going on that are just, and this was almost 30 years ago now. That was just pretty blatant,
Well,
and we're just seeing a lot of those same things now.
yeah. That
I'll tell
parasite
you an
was so
interesting.
creepy.
I'll tell you
Yeah,
an
the
interesting story about
80s
Roddenberry.
stop motion was a little
Yeah.
primitive looking now, but
Well,
yeah,
I
go
came
ahead.
across I came across a person who knew Gene Roddenberry and lived with him, and her name was Phyllis Schlemmer, and she's dead now, but she lived about an hour north of me, and I had the opportunity to meet her in a most unusual way. She had been invited to speak because she had had ET contact. She was psychic. She had worked with Andrea Puharich, who was this scientist who had developed free energy and all kinds of technologies that our government had used in various nefarious ways. And she's a very, very interesting character. And so I came to hear her speak in my hometown, and and I was sitting on the front row of this group. And for the most part, this group was a lot of elder retired people who weren't that aware of these kinds of things, these esoteric subjects. And so she would talk about when she lived with Gene Roddenberry, and she said that she channeled this group of ETs called the Council of Nine, and Roddenberry actually got a lot of the ideas for his shows for channel, and with her permission, he used her channel material to create episodes. So a lot of the stuff that you see in Star Trek came from those channeling sessions that she would do, that Roddenberry and his wife Majel Barrett would sit in on when they were living together. This is back in the 60s. So so
Like the
uh,
Ferengi.
I don't know about the Ferengi, but I know mostly the more enlightened concepts in there, and some of them not so much. But
Oh, the
at any
Traveler
rate,
was definitely way up there. The
right,
Traveler. He could
right. So
totally shape the universe with his mind.
right.
And
Well,
so can
Phyllis
we.
Schlemmer, yeah, Roddenberry had Phyllis Schlemmer to use all that material, but when he died, um, and Star Trek kind of, well, it went away. At least Next Generation went away. Then they came out with Deep Space Nine. Well, Majel Barrett, and this is according to what I hear, so I'm not going to state this as fact. This is what I've heard. I don't want anybody suing me. But what I heard was that Majel Barrett, Roddenberry's wife, took a lot of that channel material and turned it into Deep Space Nine, which was based on the Council of Nine that Phyllis Schlemmer had channeled. So that information was coming through various ET sources. It also, if you read Leonard Nimoy's "I Am Not Spock," and then later he wrote a book called "I Am Spock," he said in that book um, that there were people that were coming to the Star Trek sets from various places telling him that they had had ET contact, and that he was having ET contact in the dream state to show him how to play the character Spock so that humans would have an uplifting, benevolent view of extraterrestrials. And so he wrote this in his book, I Am Not Spock. So there's a
That's
lot
why
of
I
behind
grok
the
Spock.
scenes. Yeah. And you can tell the storylines and the things. There's a lot of light and love in those stories. And so that's why people resonate with it so much. Most of the media, especially now, is so controlled and fearful that you rarely see any love or light coming through the media anymore. And that's why people just latched onto it. And there's, of course, a lot of starseed people on this planet, but this extraterrestrial influence has always been here and always will be here, but it's ridiculed publicly so that the uninformed and the people that are buying into this reality that's being sold to them won't grasp the bigger reality, and they'll just ridicule it. And so, fortunately, I don't care what people think of me. So I don't care if people think I'm stupid or crazy or what nuts or whatever.
Well,
I've had
we
friends.
definitely think that, so don't worry.
It is hard to talk about stuff
Yeah,
though.
no,
I sometimes feel like I'm going crazy because my what I see in the world is so different from what other people see. So I'm seeing it one way and everyone's doing something else and I'm starting to think, am I really, Copus Mentis?
Yeah, when other people around us are, drinking Pepsi and consuming flaming hot Cheetos, and
Immersed
what
in the iPhone.
and we're hearing the sounds coming from the smart meters, there's just a little dichotomy here.
Yeah, I literally
well,
can hear the smart meters.
it's easier to come out with this information now because just in recent years, you've got highly credentialed people who have come out and said the same things. Paul Hellyer, who was the Minister of Defense for Canada, who's the guy in charge of all the branches of the military in Canada, has come out and said not only have all these various countries, including the US and Russia and Japan and Canada, had extraterrestrial contact, not UFO, but extraterrestrial contact, he's saying that there's at least two extraterrestrials working in the US Pentagon that he knows of. And this is
Yeah,
a guy at
I
the
heard that
highest level of
interview.
the military. All right. And
Yeah,
then
that was
you've
on
got Dr.
RT.
Stephen Greer, who has been he's been finding all these military people and people working in these high level military projects and skunk works projects who are coming out and exposing all of the extraterrestrial and man-made anti-gravity flying saucer type technologies and ET contact and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of credentialed people now who are coming out and exposing this stuff. So it's not as crazy as it used to be to talk about this stuff.
So, when we get these people who they just want the simple pat explanation for what's going on, And we've been talking almost 2 hours and we haven't even scratched the surface. It's just, it's so
Exactly.
difficult. It's so difficult for people to get it. Even, people that we know, we explain what's going on in the skies, but they'll, like Sharon said, they'll just keep coming back to us saying, they're spraying me. What
And
do I
I'm
do?
not
It's not working.
I'm not just talking about people who deny the chemtrails are even happening. I don't even bother talking to them. I'm talking about the people who know something is wrong, but they just don't understand their power and they just give into the fear and they think that whoever wins this election is going to make a difference.
Yeah,
And
they're
that's
on
it.
the hamster wheel and they just buy into the whole
Exactly.
act, hook, line, and sinker.
Well, that's why
Yeah.
I always teach about mind control and trauma-based mind control, because the only way people are going to step out of this and have an uplifting reality is by breaking the mind control programming. And the way to do that, for example, there's a great book called Mass Control: Engineering Human Consciousness by David Keith. That's a good place to start. You've also got Thanks for the Memories by Bryce Taylor. You've got Transformation of America, Kathy O'Brien. You start educating yourself about how trauma-based mind control works, then you'll start identifying it when it's being used on you.
Well, before Sharon and I discovered orgonite, we were musicians, and what we've seen in the music industry. I'm not that we were very high up in it, but we've seen the kind of stuff that goes on, and it runs the gamut from just the very simple, crazy stuff that you see people doing and their media personas to some really dark and twisted stuff.
Well, I thought that the rock stars were just crazy and on drugs. I didn't realize they were mind controlled until after the fact. So when I'd see Amy Winehouse gaining popularity and wonder why is this woman popular, I know lots of better singers right here
Because
in
she's
town.
very, very talented.
Well, yeah, but it's just a person that they were able to mold in an image and mind control and kill at the sacrificial age of 27. And we see this time and time again in music. But I used to wonder, what's up with these creepy music videos? Why is this Britney Spears video so creepy? Why is she connected to all these tubes? Why do they look traumatized? Then I realized, oh, it took me a long time to learn. They are traumatized. They are going through trauma-based mind control. And that's why they're able to deliver the message of the, Illuminati. I don't like to use that word so much, but you know what I'm saying.
Why are there 14
I call them
black
world management.
World management's better.
Why are there 14 black hands reaching up to grab this woman around her face and her throat? Like just like that kind of stuff.
Why are there eyes
that be-
everywhere?
The powers that be understand that musicians are some of the most powerful people on the planet because they can alter people's vibration in an instant with a song. That's extremely powerful. I mean, that's why I drive around and I listen to, for example, one of my absolutely favorite singers of all time is John Denver. And I can never get enough of his stuff. It's so uplifting and it keeps me in a vibration so high all the time that why would I want to listen to anything else? And there are lots and lots of fantastic musicians out, uh, contemporary musicians, but you're not going to hear them on any mainstream source. You've got to.
This is very funny because a few hours before the show, Sharon and I were wondering what kind of music you listen
We
to.
were literally saying, let's ask Ken what he listens to. So thank you.
Well, I listen to a wide array of stuff, but John Denver, hands down, is my favorite. But I listen to all kinds of stuff. I mean, anything that's uplifting. I mean, and it can range all the way 3,000 years ago. I listen sometimes to ancient Egyptian music. It's crazy what's on YouTube now.
Oh, you can hear so much great stuff. I am a big fan of Steve Roach. I don't know if you listen to his music. I love
Steve
consciousness.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's like ambient type stuff, like sort of Brian Eno, like very sort
Yeah,
of
there's
similar.
so many amazing musicians out there, but you're not going to find them through iTunes and all that kind of stuff.
Right. They're not on MTV
Pandora.
because it's, you want consciousness raising music. And so this totally ties in with the mind control agenda because what's pushed and
Yeah.
what's popular is music with a message that controls the way we think. And sometimes I can't even believe what I'm hearing out there when I'm like at the supermarket or at the FedEx place and I'm hearing this music. It's music for children, first off, with terrible messages. And it's this repetitive loop and it's very brainwashing.
Well, that machine-esque that hi-hat sound, the repetitive that thing, there's got to be a mind-controlled frequency in that thing because
Well, all of it.
Yeah.
all of it reinforces the programming. And likewise, music of a high vibration will break the programming. And so that's why musicians are assassinated. You know, people like John Lennon or uh, Bob Marley and many others. They're killed because they start getting involved in politics. They start doing things that are uplifting the vibration of young people, and they start shifting consciousness. And the powers that be know very well about that, and they won't allow it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they nip those things in the bud before they can, quote unquote, get out of hand.
All the videos nowadays, I only know about this because I read about it on Vigilant Citizen, which is a great website to learn more about mind control.
Yeah,
But
it's
he
great.
keeps
They
up with all of
deconstruct
the,
all of the
yeah.
symbols and images and all of that stuff that's in the music videos and whatnot.
But another thing that's interesting is what this does to your mind is when you see what these celebrities actually go through, instead of resenting them and thinking they're just a train wreck and getting a laugh out of their troubles, then you start to see that they are human beings that have been so abused, so mind controlled, they don't even know what's going on anymore, and their lives are despair. And these are supposed to be the role models for the youth, and all they're doing is spitting out a message they don't even know what they're saying. So
Yeah.
when you start to get this perspective and then you see, well, I'm not so much different from them, we're all just people, then you start to feel sympathy and compassion. That changes the way you think.
Precisely. And, you know, that reminds me one time I was griping about the Bush family to these reptilians, and they said, well, actually, it takes a higher level of consciousness to play the bad guy in your reality. So, you know, I'm looking at it from this very small viewpoint of my little 3D being with my need to eat and buy groceries and pay rent. And there's this bigger picture of, well, in the big picture, we're just all here playing a game of consciousness, and we chose to be here. Nobody shoved us here. We chose to be here. And so when you understand that, then you can't complain and gripe. And particularly when you truly take responsibility for creating your reality, then every bit of it, good or bad, you have to take responsibility for. So when things aren't going my way, which is not that often anymore, but when things don't go my way, I have to ask myself, who am I being that's creating this?
Mm-hmm.
And when I figure that out, and usually I trace it back to some childhood programming, and I let go of the programming, and boom, everything changes.
Well, I think that's very helpful for me, especially because I was given Ritalin from about the age of 4.5 till I was around 14 or so. So my formative years. So I have a lot of stuff that stemmed from that I'm still battling with and dealing with. Not to like overblow it or toot my own horn or anything, but you know, it's something that we all have to deal with. And anyhow, I've really enjoyed this discussion, and we got a couple minutes left. I just wanted to really quickly talk about healthy diets and detox just a little bit more, things that everyday people can do fairly easily to get on the path of getting rid of these old defunct programmings that don't serve us anymore and go on into higher stages of thinking.
Okay, well, let me give people some very practical things that they can do to keep their bodies cleaned out of these biowarfare agents, these heavy metals, these geoengineering pollutants, these desiccated human blood cells, and all these other things. So on a daily basis, as I mentioned, everyone, and also the Fukushima and Chernobyl and other nuclear fallout coming down on us. Patrick Flanagan, who's a brilliant scientist, was telling me the other day that he's been measuring the radiation in the atmosphere around the globe, and he said it's astronomically high in the upper atmosphere everywhere, including the southern hemisphere. So if you think that you're living in the southern hemisphere and you're going to get away from it, you're not. So practically speaking, what you can do. Okay, I mentioned before there's a supplement called Rad Neutral that will neutralize radioactivity in the body, and I take that every day. I also take Coseva Advanced TRS Nano Zeolites every day. That will pull these toxins out from throughout the body. I take monoatomic iodine. There's one I really love called Illumidine. I sell it on my website. It's it's Ormus iodine or monoatomic iodine, also known as nascent iodine, that's been programmed with the anti-frequencies, scalar frequencies of all known radioactive elements. So you get the iodine to boost your thyroid, which everyone these days is deficient in pretty much. But you also get these frequencies that help neutralize radiation in the body and protect you. Then there are Other things I'll take periodically when I'm doing a cleanse. So like green algae, like E3 live blue green algae, I take that every day. I take, as I mentioned, probiotics and minerals and vitamins and enzymes every day. And that's all food based. If you want to see on my website, most of what I take is on my website. I also like this multi-mineral vitamin nutrient complex called Intramax that is phenomenal. It's got everything in it. So that's something I take as well.
And your website once more for us, Ken?
It's freshandalive.com.
Thank you so much, Ken, for being with us today. I have enjoyed this conversation so much. Please come back and visit with us again next week on the Human Frequency on American Freedom Radio. Check out our website, thekembo.com, and Ken's website, freshandalive.com.
Thank you.